In this video, we're going to talk about 3 very simple and practical things that you can apply to your life to increase your levels of happiness. Let's dive deep together. It's time for Real Talk. If you're wanting to increase your levels of happiness in your life, I want to give you 3 very simple, practical things that you can start doing today that will dramatically increase your overall feeling of being happy. Now, the first thing that we have to look at is the fact that happiness is a feeling. Now, feelings come on the back end of triggers, these things that happen in our lives that lead to us feeling a certain way. Now, the hard part about feelings, though, is sometimes these things come out of nowhere. We really don't know where they come from. And this oftentimes happens actually when we are feeling and experiencing happiness. We don't really know why we're feeling happy. We just are. It's in a moment. We've all had these situations where you're sharing a meal, or you're watching a sunset, or you're going for a drive, or you're at an event and you're with people that you love, and all of a sudden time kind of feels like it slows down. You're so immersed in that moment that you sense this peace, this contentment, this underlying current of happiness, because you are so immersed in that moment that nothing else is even entering into your consciousness. You're just there. You're fully present. Now, the 3 things that we're going to be talking about, the first one is being present. The second one has to do with our intentionality around the imagination we've been gifted with that many of us as adults have lost. And then the third part is happiness directed at other people. So starting off with being present, one of the challenges that we face as humans is we're constantly in our heads, right? When we talk about being present, the reason we most often are not fully vested and present in the moment, which is actually what sabotages our happiness, is because we're living in the past or we're living in the future in our mind. So in the past, what we're doing is in our present moment, we're thinking about things that we should have done. We are dealing with guilt, we're dealing with shame, we're dealing with regret. We're thinking about all of these types of things that we want to have, if we could, we would change, we would have done differently. And so we're actually in our minds, we're living in a state and a time that doesn't exist. And we're drawing from our past into our present reality, this emotion that causes us to feel tension, which directly inhibits our ability to experience the happiness that we want to be experiencing. I'll give you an example. So if you had something happen to you in your past, maybe it was a somewhat traumatic experience. In that moment when it happened, it was painful. Something happened to you. But the only reason that we relive that pain is because of triggers. And those triggers are the things, just like we talked about, that bring out the emotion or the feelings of almost reliving that incident. This is why in our mind, when we can start to practice mastering our thoughts and mastering our emotions, we're no longer dominated by the emotions of a situation that happened in the past. It's not about the situation. It's about our thinking about that situation. Now, on the opposite side is the future. The future is where we have a lot of worry, anxiety, fear, all of these things that we're thinking, what if this were to happen? And again, those things are not founded in reality. They're not factual. They are these projections of our mind into a future that doesn't exist yet. And that causes, again, for us to pull emotion from time that doesn't exist into our present, making our present tense, minimizing the potential for us to be able to operate in a place of happiness. Now, happiness, I know all of us have these somewhat different definitions. To me, the way that I like to define it is this state of peace, of contentment, of really this joy that you are so fully, again, immersed in that moment that you're taking it all in. You're absolutely fully present. If you will start challenging yourself when you're thinking about the past or you're thinking about the future, and you start asking questions like, what is useful about this and what is not useful about this? We know the past and the future are both useful to some degree. It's great for us to learn from things that happened in our past and to create different things in our lives, like boundaries, for example, different things in our lives based on what happened to us. This is very useful. However, the emotion, again, drawing that into our present tense, is not always useful. It's the same thing with the future. Planning, preparing, looking ahead, having vision. These are things that are very useful. So don't just say anything past or future I can't think about. That's not really useful. But what we have to be careful of is the emotion we're pulling into our present and determining whether or not it is actually helping us, if it's useful, or not helping us. It's not useful. The second part is using our imagination. Now, if you've got kids or you've been around kids for any period of time, you know that when kids associate into an alternate ego, an identity, like my daughter, for example, when she is in her play kitchen, there's nothing that I could say or do that would convince her that she's not a little chef and that everything that she's doing, she knows that she's pretending, but she's so immersed in that moment that she'll be putting all these toys and bowls and all sorts of different things. And what happens is she believes to some degree that she's a chef in that moment, and she's so immersed in it that it enables her to be able to experience and do things as if she was a little chef. Now, I know that's kind of a funny example, but the reality is that our imagination is such a beautiful gift that we don't tap into, and it actually is directly tied to our levels of happiness. Because if you are able to tap into your imagination and you start thinking about the version of you that you would like to become and the life that you want to create, what it does is it gives you very practical things to do in order to become that version of yourself. So if you're thinking about a future that is different than the one you have right now, it's not about changing your circumstances. Changing our circumstances isn't what makes us happier. What makes us happier is when we can start to tap into this imagination and we start thinking from a future version of ourselves. If you can think about the body you want to have, the husband or wife you want to be, the type of marriage that you want to have, the leader you want to be, whatever it is for you, if you can think about who you want to become, rather than allowing it to create this gap, this is me and that's what I want to become, I have a long ways to go, a lot of work to do, what we do is we use our imagination and we actually start thinking from that place. How would that version of me talk? How would that version of me carry myself? How would that version of me interact with other people? What would I say? What would I do? What would my decisions be? And it allows us to draw from that future version of ourselves. Again, this is the useful part about using the future into our present reality. And we start to realize and recognize that the things around us, they're not what determine our happiness. The happiness is determined from the inside. It's created from the inside based on how we see life. And if you want to see life differently, if you want to change the frame that you're looking through, you have to create a new frame that you can operate from. We start operating the way that we want to be, and life changes in direct proportion to how we change ourselves. Now, the third one is very simple, is kindness or happiness directed at other people. Now, we all know what it feels like to give to someone with no expectation, and we just give because we want to give it. There's a really good feeling, that happiness that comes up inside when we're not focused on ourselves. But this can happen in different contexts. One is you actually share something in a kind way or in a happy way, you give, right, to an actual person. The other is energetically, as far as what we are thinking about pertaining to other people. Meaning, if you were to sit every single day for 3 minutes and all you focused on was 3 people, and for 60 seconds you prayed for them, you wished them well, depending on your belief system, you sent them good vibes, right? And you're focusing on the energy that's going on inside of you. When we can shift our hearts and shift our energy, focusing on things outside of ourselves, again, giving, and we're simply directing that kindness at them. We're wishing them well. We're directing happiness at them. I want them to be happy. I want them to be fulfilled. I want good things for them. When we do that, what it does is it actually changes our state as well, because we're focused on other people. So these are all very simple practices that are very challenging. I will tell you, they're simple, but they're not easy. So if you can start practicing today, questioning your thoughts and your feelings as they come in and wrestling with them being from the past or from the future and asking what's useful and not useful, it will allow you to anchor into the present moment. And when you can anchor into the present moment, it gives you this foundation of knowing exactly where you are, and you can start to craft a vision of the future version of yourself that you want to become. And when you do that, you can start to step into those things every single day because you'll be carrying yourself differently because you have a vision of the version of you that you want to become. And when we can do that, it actually brings us to this place where life's really not about us anymore. And when you can proactively every single day focus on the energy that you are expelling or that you're extending, and it being directed at other people through the frame of happiness and goodness and kindness towards them, your entire life will start to change, and you will find that every single day you get a little bit happier. I hope this is useful. If you've got any questions or if you want to continue the conversation, make sure you drop them below. Thank you so much for sharing some time with me. This has been Real Talk. I'll see you very soon.